What is estoppel in contract law? Imagine you are relying on what someone has said or promised, and then they try to back out or change their story later. It can cause real problems in business and contracts. That's where estoppel comes into play. It's a rule that stops someone from going back on a statement or promise they made if others relied on it and it caused them harm. Think of it as a fairness rule that keeps people honest in their words and actions. In contract law, estoppel is used to prevent unfair surprises. For example, if a business promises to give a discount and the other side relies on that promise by making plans or investments, the first business cannot suddenly refuse to give the discount later. It's about fairness and keeping everyone consistent. This helps avoid situations where one side benefits unfairly by changing their mind after others have acted based on their words. For estoppel to work, certain conditions must be met. First, there must be a clear and understandable communication or shared understanding. Second, the person making the statement must have intended for the other to relying on it. Third, the other party must have reasonably relied on that statement and changed their actions or plans. Lastly, the person who made the statement cannot later try to deny it if it would harm the relying party. There are different types of estoppel in contract law. Estoppel by representation happens when someone makes a factual statement that others believe and act on. Promissory estoppel occurs when a promise is made without formal consideration, but someone relies on it and suffers harm if it's broken. Estoppel by convention involves both parties agreeing on certain facts, and one tries to deny those facts later. Proprietary estoppel prevents someone from claiming ownership rights if others relied on their conduct to their detriment. Waiver by estoppel happens when a party's actions lead the other to believe they won't enforce certain rights, even if they technically could. Many common mistakes in contracts can lead to estoppel issues. For example, making informal promises outside the written agreement can cause trouble. If you say, "We won't enforce that clause," and the other side relies on it, you might be estopped from later enforcing it. Not documenting changes or waivers properly is another mistake. If you agree to modify a contract verbally, the other side might claim estoppel if you try to revert to the original terms later. Sending mixed signals, like saying you won't enforce a deadline but then doing so without clear notice, can also create estoppel problems. To avoid these issues, always put important promises or modifications in writing. Be consistent in your communications and actions. If you decide not to enforce a certain term, clearly document that decision and specify whether it's temporary or permanent. During negotiations, avoid vague language and make sure all agreements are clear and in writing. If someone makes a promise, ask for it in writing to prevent misunderstandings. Be cautious about accepting partial or different performance without addressing it in the contract. If you do, you might be prevented from later insisting on strict compliance. Understanding estoppel is important because it can work against you even if your contract is clear. If your conduct or statements suggest you agree to certain terms, you might be bound by them. That's why being careful with what you say and do, and making sure everything is documented, helps prevent legal trouble. If you're relying on someone's statement, be sure it's clear and in writing. If you're the one making a promise, avoid casual remarks that could later cause problems. Keeping your words and actions aligned with your written contracts is the best way to stay protected from estoppel issues.